I ran out of Claude Code tokens for the week. They refresh in 2 hours, so I've got some time to do other stuff now. And so Bondig on Twitter asked me about my agent workflow, how many agents do I have, how do I do it, what do I still do hands-on, etc. And since at this point I'm kind of addicted to tokens, so if I don't have tokens, I don't really work on anything because I'm going to be 1,000 times faster with them than if I don't have them. So when I run out of tokens, I either buy more or I'll just take a break for a while. So I got about 2 hours. So it's not going to be a 2 hour long video, but I figured other people might be curious about using AI agents, using MCPs, getting them to do almost everything for you. My hypothesis that I'm testing out and trying to implement every day is I want to do everything for the AI agent, but it can do. So instead of going on a website, instead of talking to a server, instead of SSHing into stuff, I want to talk to the AI agent and give it bridges into everything that I have. So I'll talk a bit about my stack and how that works. So first question he asked. So these are good questions, thanks for asking them. What does your agent stack look like day to day? How many agents are running? What are they doing? And how hands-on are you still? So currently, as you can see in my terminal, I have 8, 9, 10, 11 agents running. So my stack is just Claude Code with a bunch of MCPs and skills and things I've built on top of it. I'm also experimenting with having Claude Code talk to OpenClaw and another server. I know OpenClaw is very popular. One thing I find a bit scary about it is it does not have a permissions system, and so there's nothing stopping an AI system from deleting all the files on your computer if you give it infinite permissions. And people will be like, oh, well, I'll put in the file, I'll put in the prompt, that don't do that. That's not how AIs work. That's not how language models work. You don't just tell it to do something and it does it. It's much more random. It's much more chaotic. So you can't bank on that. So the system I have probably has more functionality than OpenClaw, but it has more gates for limiting how things work. So the stack is just Claude Code with like 50 MCPs. Half of them I've probably written myself, and a bunch of skills. So when I talk to it to do something, like if I say I want to find this movie, this old movie, it knows automatically what websites to search on, and if it's a super old movie you can't get anymore, maybe it'll find like a torrent for it, legally of course, for movies that are outside the public domain. Or I ask it, hey, what's on my calendar? What are my emails? Can you reply to my emails for me? So right now I've got about 11 running. What are they doing and how hands-on still am I? So let's go through the first one. I'm working on, my main product is called Parakeet, and I'm working on which is a chat app for people in the US prison system effectively, and I'm trying to work on a spin-off of that to create an AI learning system where people in prison will be able to talk to artificial intelligence, ChatGPT basically, and learns things from it. And I currently have a system like that in production. I have thousands of users using it. And I'm trying to find a way to formalize that, to turn it into more of a curriculum and have it integrated with the sort of the federal prison system. So for that, it's doing research for me. It's going on LinkedIn. It's finding out who I should contact. It's writing documents for me. It's reading PDFs from other organizations which have managed to get approved by the government. And it's also updating the pages on the website with this new branding and this new sub-product. The next one is local models. I'm trying to get local models to work. So you can get local models to work. Again, like I said, I use Claude Code exclusively. I'm experimenting with local models because, again, I run out of tokens sometimes. And I got it to mostly work. Limitation is that I can't get it to work with MCPs very well. So if you figure out how to do that, let me know. Next, I have another one which is processing customer support tickets. Again, it's all just Claude Code with a bunch of stuff I've written on top of it. It loads up all the tickets, spawns an individual context to handle each ticket, logging, checking. This is another PR I'm working on. So I don't write any code myself directly. I spawn the system and I have it just implement things and create PRs for me. This is a thing for my main product. 1Password from .env. I'm changing how my password system works. Glitch tip plus new server. I have my own server where I run a bunch of programs like my own photos, for example. I have Image to host my own photos instead of using Google Photos because I'm a cool hipster. And one of the things I want to add to these is Glitch Tip, which is a way of monitoring alerts for your product. But my server currently doesn't have enough specification, so it doesn't have enough resource, doesn't have enough RAM to do it. So again, just talking to the AI, I have it figured. It has the connection. It can connect to the server. It can see how much RAM it has. It can upgrade it to a more powerful server. I pay more money per month to the company, but it can do that. All I do is just talk to the AI. I try not to go on a web browser to do it. So it's figuring out the limitations of my server and spinning up a new one. It already snapshot the old one. It's deploying things to the new one, and then it's going to reconnect the DNS because also, yes, the DNS server is connected to this. Graffiti is the memory system. I'm trying to create a system where both my local Claude Code on my laptop and the OpenClaw instance I have, which is running on its own server because I don't trust it at all to run on my thing here, they can have the same memory banks, so they can read and write from everything. Tasks is a list of some of the other business ideas I'm working on now. Actually, a lot of people have asked about AI girlfriends for Parakeet. These are people in prison. They're lonely. No one cares about them. That's the reality of the world. They've been abandoned by the world for the most part. And so I think AI girlfriends are going to be huge for normal people in the street. So how much bigger do you think the market's going to be for people on the inside who don't have much opportunities for, well, much of anything, to be honest? Tupa Arms, I'm a resident of Paraguay. I'm in Japan right now, but I'm a resident of Paraguay. I'm investigating to see if setting up a company to make bullets locally in Paraguay could be a good business idea. Because they import a lot of stuff in Paraguay. It's not a very rich country, but some stuff is quite expensive because they import it. They don't produce it locally. So can I do that? Again, it's researching what kind of lawyers I need to talk to, which government agencies I need to get approved, what kind of facility do I need, what kind of... I mean, I have a background in mechanical engineering. It's what I studied, actually. I didn't study programming stuff. So I've worked in like factories and stuff, so I understand how to set up these development processes, but again, it's all the paperwork. Another idea I have is just this lookbook fashion product, and I'm just talking to it. I'm having it spin up websites, I'm having it do research, trying to have it do basically the entire company. This one I'm not going to click, that's financials. It connects to my accounting software, so whenever I purchase anything, it all goes to my accounting program, and then I can talk to it through AI. So if I need to classify any of my expenses, which you do if you have a company, right? And I want to know how much money I'm spending on what. I just talk to the AI. I gave it a set of rules of how it should classify expenses. It does all that. And purchases, I'm trying to use it to go on Chrome. It's using Chrome to go onto Amazon to buy, I think it's a toy for the dog. I can't remember what it is right now. And this one I don't remember, and this one is just a list. So hands-on, that's a good question. Because I'm not using OpenClaw, I've created sort of a dynamic permission system on top of Claude's normal permission system. So one issue with AI agents is how much do you trust them? Do you give it full access to everything on your computer? Full access to your email, it can send out anything you want. I don't. What I do is certain things I give it auto access. Some things which are not very destructive, like reading certain files from certain directories, that's fine. You can read the files as much as you want. You don't have to ask me. Certain things are hard blocked. For example, trying to run Python code just in line in the agent, which it will write a lot in order to do certain tasks. I don't want it to do that because that means it's just running Python code. I don't have to read through the code to figure out what's going on. So that's blocked. And there's certain things which sit in the middle, which it has to ask me for permission. So currently it can read all my emails without permission, but it has to ask me for permission every single time it sends out an email. And every time it does something new that it doesn't have a permission system for, the default in Claude is to ask the user for permission. And then I determine, should this be added to the always allow list? Do I want to figure out, do I want to manually ask me every time? Or is this going in the absolute deny list? Part of the problem is that Claude's permission system is not super perfect. So I've built a few things on top of it to make it a bit smarter. So for example, curl, if you don't know, is a computer program to send messages to servers. Very, very useful. Now, I don't want to give it maximum auto approve because that means it can curl any server on the internet and download that on my laptop, and that's a terrible idea. But if it's curling a server running on my computer or one of my servers, then okay, I should probably auto approve that. You can't do that built in with the permission systems from Claude Code, so I am just kind of building my own system on top of that. So SSHing, depending on what kind of command it tries to run on SSH. And if you don't know, SSH is when it tries to talk to another server. I've got a more narrow system, etc. So hands-on, typically when I'm working, I just have like 8 of these, 10, whatever, as much as my brain can handle, of these running, and I have it go through until it asks me a question. So I'm still hands-on, I'm still on my computer every day. I just have 12 things running at once, and it does a lot of the work until it asks me a question or it needs my permission to go through something. And something I keep working for all the time is making it smarter so it doesn't need to ask for my permission as much. So over time it asks less and less permissions, and the goal is to be as hands-off as possible. How do I handle context? How do your agents know what's relevant at any moment? Context is huge. If you don't understand context, you will not be able to use a language model very effectively. I recommend, if you don't understand like what context is, study how language models work in a simplistic way. I actually gave like a little lecture to some friends of mine last night where I kind of I went through a diagram and I explained like how language models work and why context is important. But in short, you want to make your context as small as possible. So you notice I have these like 10 or so different tabs here. I could have just one session and talk about all these different things in it. But that is going to, again, destroy the context. So keep your context as small as possible. When you spawn a new conversation with a language model, keep it scoped to exactly that thing. Like, I want to do this one specific task for this one thing. And then when you're done, close it out or wipe the context history, whatever. But don't try and do 50 things at once. It's going to keep, that's when you're going to get more hallucinations. That's when you're going to get a lot of problems. In fact, the customer support ticket I had before, it was just doing one context. So it would handle customer tickets in the first in the context, then it would handle the next ticket in the same context, then it would handle the same ticket in the next context, and by the time it got to ticket 4, it was just completely making up nonsense. And so again, I tried to improve the prompt, it doesn't help. So instead, it spins up individual sessions with their own context for each ticket, and that mostly solves the issue. There's still some bugs, which I'm working through, but on the whole, it was a huge improvement. So that's how you handle the context. So how do your agents know what's relevant at any given moment? Also, you want to inject things into your prompt automatically. I use Claude Code. It has a skill system where if I say something like, check my memories for this, I don't have to tell it, okay, now check the file in this directory. It just knows that if it says that, it'll automatically inject a bunch of instructions into the prompt telling it where to go. So you want to try to have a system which injects information just in time in the prompt as your agent needs it. Because if you give it a huge list at the start of everything, by the time it gets to later on in the conversation, that is completely forgotten. It's either been compacted or the weights of it are so low that it's irrelevant. So what I found works quite well is skill injection. Based upon the keywords, based upon the messages you send to it, it will dynamically inject information to keep your agents in line. And since I've started doing that, they do keep the ball a lot more. It's not 100%, but it's way better than it was before. Which MCPs are non-negotiable in your stack, the ones you'd never remove? At this point, all of them, but I would say the biggest one is having a memory server, because then you don't have to open up new sessions and tell it over again and again what you're doing. Personally, I use Graffiti, which means whenever I tell it save something to memory, it saves it in the memory graph. And then when you have another session, you can tell it to reference that, or sometimes it can do it automatically, so it can keep track of things. Because trying to have one session with one context, it's not going to work. You cannot keep long-running information in a context. It will fall out of context. The weights will become too low over time. Contexts are just for solving a specific task, and then that's it. You're done. Throw it out. Long-lasting information should be stored in other places, and so the MCPs that help you do that, and for me personally, not an endorsement, but I use Linear as my Kanban and Graffiti as my graph, and that's what I'm using pretty well. What's the first agent you built that actually moved the needle on revenue? As soon as I could get it to make pull requests consistently, I was able to fire my programmer because he just couldn't. So I had two free people working for me last year, and I fired all of them because AI is just way cheaper and way faster. People say, oh my God, Claude Code, you spend $200 a month on AI. That is not true. I spend like $1,500 a month on AI if you count across all the subs and stuff. It's still really cheap. Because you have to think of it not in terms of a software subscription compared to like Netflix or something. You have to think of it in terms of human labor and replacing human labor. And then it becomes a lot cheaper. So for me, it was getting it to write code for me. I don't write code directly. I haven't opened my editor. I don't use VS Code. I use WebStorm, which is kind of the same thing. But I haven't actually opened my editor in probably 3 or 6 months at this point. It writes all the code for me. Now I still review all the code myself, but I talk to it through pull request systems, like through GitHub's pull request system. But I was able to get rid of my, I was able to fire my programmer for that, and then also the customer support guy. I mentioned the Zendesk tickets does it all automatically at this point. Now it doesn't like trigger as soon as a customer sends a message. I'm still debugging it, so I've got to run the script manually, because it still has a few bugs here and there. But even then, even if I have to check it every once in a while, it's a lot cheaper than paying a few $1,000s to someone a month. So effectively, there's the set of labor which can be performed by humans that humans will do better than AI is getting smaller and smaller and smaller every day. So if you've got a business and you are wondering how you can use AI agents to, move revenue or to lower expenses, and I think it's probably in many cases easier to lower expenses. Just look at the tasks that you look at your expenses, okay? Go through them, biggest to smallest, figure out which one is the easiest to implement through AI agents, and then try to go through that. Test it out, see how well it works. Now, again, difficulty in a human sense is different than difficulty in an AI agent sense. So the example is like the lawyer versus the guy flipping hot hamburgers at McDonald's. The lawyer is going to be much easier to replace by an AI agent than the guy flipping a hamburger, right? I worked for a self-driving car startup in Silicon Valley. I had a contract there. And self-driving cars, which you'll notice people do not talk about as much now as because the whole thing is, ChatGPT, AI, is because it's actually a lot easier to create an AI that will analyze an X-ray and tell you if you have cancer or not, as opposed to getting one which will drive a car in the world. Things that are embodied in the world are much harder for AIs to do. Things that are purely information, purely digital, in their realm, if you want to think of it that way, that don't require simulation of the physics of reality, a much simplified version of the world, it can do a lot. So basically, if your AI agents are not moving the needle, they're not increasing revenue, or they're not lowering your expenses, then you really messed up, honestly, because at this point there's a lot of low-hanging fruit. There's like almost an infinite number of things you can do. So I would recommend figure out what is costing you the most versus what can be automated through AI the most, and then try to implement it yourself. And if you can't figure out yourself, then I don't know, find someone. I hate the term AI native. No one's an AI native unless you were born last year. But find someone who's competent enough and can explain this to you and perhaps audit, figure out what can be implemented or not, right? Like any other task or any other competency historically. What tasks have you fully handed off to agents you thought would never be automatable? Writing all the code was a big one. In the beginning, I was using Cursor, and Cursor has an autocomplete system where you're still writing the code in your editor, but it would autocomplete. And the autocomplete was pretty good. And then Claude Code came out and it got improved. And at this point, I don't write any of the code myself. Now, I still review it, and maybe at one point the review will be done by AI. I don't trust like that. I want human oversight, but not because I necessarily trust the humans, but because the AI is more random and chaotic. Game theory doesn't work with AIs, I guess I would say, but you can perhaps do it with humans. But yeah, writing all the code for my projects, that was kind of surprising and a bit humbling. I did not come up with this quote, but it's a really good one. It's, if you're a programmer, senior level or above, whatever, AI has made 90% of your skills useless, but the remaining 10% are 1,000 times more valuable. So I can write lines of Python. I don't really write Python myself, whatever. I can write Python so well. No one cares. anymore. It doesn't matter. It's now, can you use this system to implement it for you? Who's the best at using the AI system, not necessarily doing the tasks yourself. So yeah, writing all the code. Granted, it's a full stack web application with queues and servers, so it's more complicated than a normal CRUD app, but it's not necessarily rocket science. So perhaps there are levels of complexity where AI writing code does not work very well, but I haven't run into that myself. Where do the agents still fail you? What do you still have to do yourself? That's a good question. I would say my biggest issue is actually the permission systems. Yes, there's some places where the agents do fail, like the actual model itself fails, but mostly it's the permission systems, because it will, I'll tell it to do something and it will run like a block of code or something to do it. And I'll tell it, no, don't do it that way, because then I can't auto-approve that, because it means I'd have to auto-approve Python in general, which I don't want to. That's dangerous. So trying to get it to write, to use programs on your computer and use MCPs in such a way that it can be done safely and I don't have to oversight it. That is kind of annoying. Also, having it follow standard coding patterns or coding patterns in my project is sometimes more difficult. And I try to, it'll read how your code base works. But for example, my master branch is called dev, because I just messed it up on my project. I never changed it. And so it always tries to be, I need to merge this into master. I'm like, no, you need to merge it into dev. Again, you can tell it in the conversation, but by the time you finish the conversation, it won't remember. And if you put it inside a big document of like how to do things, it will forget it, right? So you'd have to find a way to kind of inject that just in time. So I'm kind of working on that still, like specific coding practices, but I'm still not sure exactly how to inject those when it's editing certain files. But that's not that big of a deal. Yeah, what do I still have to do myself? Good question. At this point, I'm trying to automate myself out of my life. So I haven't hit like any hard limits yet. And hard limits that I do hit sometimes get solved. Like one limit I had is that I have like 40 or 50 MCPs. Probably world champion or something at this point, which is really high, I think, according to Claude itself. Maybe it's glazing me, as the Zoomers say. But this wasn't possible like a month ago, because you couldn't run that many at once. You'd run out of context. So Anthropic added lazy loading to Claude Code, and that made it work. But before that, the setup I had would not work, or it would only work in a very limited way. So what's interesting is the state of development of agents is so fast. It's so fast, like you blink and something that didn't work now works, or something that did work now doesn't work because they released a new version to break it. So do pay attention to, it's not so much a question of what doesn't work and what does work now, it's at what speed is that moving. So think more in terms of velocity than position. That's my advice. How do you manage reliability? What happens when something breaks, when an agent does something wrong? Good question. So one is prompt it properly, so it's less likely to do something wrong. 2, use permission systems so it can't do something wrong. And 3, and the biggest one I find is have it have a feedback loop onto itself. So if oftentimes it'll do something and say, yay, it works, it's done, and you'll try and it doesn't work. The code doesn't work, or the image it generated look weird, or something like that. The output, the artifact it has produced, is not good. So what you do is you prompt it in such a way that it will look at that artifact, and it has a set of tests, a set of checks that it itself would do on it to make sure everything works. So for example, when it tries to create a pull request, again, I'm using coding as an example here, but it works with other things as well. Have it run your linter, right? Do it programmatically. That's another thing, is you want to have programmatic checks, not prompt checks. Prompt checks is when you tell, maybe that's not the right term, that's what I'm calling it. It's when you tell the AI to do something. Like after you change this file, verify this. Like you changed the name of the person in this document, then you yourself must verify it. And again, AIs are kind of random and chaotic. It doesn't always work. So you want to try and have programmatic checks. And so that was really big for me. So if I tell the AI, don't write in this file, it'll still write in the file. So instead, at the programmatic level, you write an actual script, or you can have it help you do it, right, in JavaScript, TypeScript, whatever, which stops it from writing the file directly. So don't fully trust it to do what you want, have programmatic enforcement that it usually can't go through. It's sometimes pretty clever and it'll try and find a way around, but try to have programmatic enforcement of things that it is not supposed to do, and that will fix things a lot. But if you keep just trying to give it prompts over and over and doesn't work, then again, programmatic enforcement's the way to go. If you were to start over today, what would you build first? I probably would have added a memory MCP first. I didn't have one for a long time, and so every single time I had to re-explain everything. And since I've used it, it's got like information about me, information about my relations, information about the place I live. So I'll just open up a new session and be like, hey, where's a restaurant nearby? That's it. I don't tell it where I am. Why? Because it'll read the memories, it'll see where I am, it'll be like, okay, and then it'll try and find places nearby. So also, don't trust the companies entirely. Some of the AI companies do have a built-in memory system, but it goes on their servers, and you can't download it very easily or access it. So what I recommend is try and set that up on your own system, which is just a bunch of text files or something like that, on your own computer, which means you have access to it. And if you switch to another AI system, you can just keep all those files with you. And this new AI system will have access to all of that. So yeah, a memory system was a pretty big game changer and gave it a sense of continuity over conversations that is just not possible with just 200K limit. Okay, wow, it's been half an hour. What unlocked the jump to where you are now? Was it a specific agent, a workflow, or just compounding over time? These questions are for our own team implementation as well as the upcoming MCP server, allowing for such external agents to plug into the Agently system. Oh yeah, I guess I could plug their thing. Their product is called Agently, and so I was discussing my agentic flow versus that. I'd say compounding over time. It's more of like a snowball that gets bigger and bigger, because let's say I need to do something. Like I need to search, like I don't really go on Twitter at this point. I have it go on Twitter for me and tell me everyone who DM'd me, everyone who atted me. And I also have another thing I'm building, which is basically Twitter, but it goes through all of the posts and it removes all of the nonsense. So I don't want someone's like, oh wow, that's awesome. I want if you make videos, you're a video creator and you post your videos on Twitter, I just want your posts for the content. That's it. I don't want anyone's comments. I don't want that. My version of YouTube is already pretty weird. Oh yeah, I don't go on YouTube anymore. I just ask it, search for YouTube videos that have so-and-so. It will give me a list of them. It will give me the rating, which you don't get on YouTube anymore. But if you know what you're doing, you can get it. Rating, length, etc. And I'll say, play video 2. Boom, downloads it locally on my computer and plays it instantly. So I'm using it as like a search engine into things. And so going back to Twitter, yeah, I'm getting it to the point where I don't have to actually go on the website anymore. It will just, I can talk to it, ask it what's there, draft responses to people, and do that. And so as you build more integrations, as you figure out more of the limitations of language models and you try to build patches around them, as you add more functionality to it, it's like a rocket that gets faster and faster. And I would advise you to try to start this as soon as possible, because if you can use this thing at 100% capability, and I'm not there, I may be, 19% maximum speed with what I'm doing. The goal is to get to the point where I can have an idea and just talk, and it will be implemented instantly. That is the goal. And when I say instantly, maybe it runs for half an hour. That's fine. I'm saying I don't have to do any more work. I can have an idea for a business. I can have an idea of a target audience. I can have an idea of a marketing strategy, and I will just talk to the AI, come up with hash it out, have a conversation with it, try to figure out what to do. And then once there's an implementation plan, I just say, go. And I, would double check everything at the end, and it does that. If you can get to that level, you will always beat everyone's doing it manually. And even someone who's using the AI, but they're only 10 times faster, because they're using ChatGPT on their phone like a boomer, right? Even if you're at that level, yes, you're still a lot faster than the average person. That's true, and you should be proud of that. You're still going to always lose to the guy who's 1,000 times faster. So I would say the more it's like a Pareto distribution. The more you use it, the more and more competent you get at it, the faster and faster the system gets. And so I would advise you to start compounding now as opposed to in 6 months or a year. And try to leverage AI agents to their maximum ability. If you try to launch a business and you spend 6 months doing a bunch of stuff, and I spend 6 months learning how to use the AI, and on month 6 I start, you're here, I'm not moving, like that. Since you can be so much exponentially faster in almost everything, assuming you're someone who can use these systems well, the incentive is to max out your skill level, like cap out your skill level in this, and then try to do business or whatever it is your goal is. It's not just that. Like I'll have an idea. I'll come up with like a list of like exercises I want to do, like workouts. I'll tell it, okay, I'm in my house. I don't have a bench press. I've got bands. I've got a pull-up bar. Here's a list of devices I have. Here's a list of equipment I have. Here's a list of like my historical workouts. Here's a list of like, I went to the chiropractor and they said, your posture is not good. Like, here's a list of some of the health problems I have. To combine all those together, create a workout plan for me, and then upload it to my phone. Bam, done. So don't think of it just as a business tool. It is that, and it's very good at it, but think of it as an everything tool. You want to rethink things from new first principles. Whenever you try to do anything in the world, how can I do this now that AI is possible? Again, not just programming. A lot of the examples I give are programming, but it's not exclusively that. So yeah, just compounding over time. A big one for me was, I guess a specific agent was Claude Code. Because once you can, I think they messed up. Whoever was in the marketing department called it Claude Code needs to be fired or something. It is not Claude Code. That is a terrible branding. Because I only use it partially to code. You see, I do a bunch of other stuff here. Just talking to like my accounting software, that's not coding. Or I'll have a conversation with like, can you explain like, I was asking it, like, can you explain the idea of martyrdom in like Shia Islam and how it relates to sort of like Iranian contemporary thought? And also recommended like some movies that are like based upon the war in the 80s that kind of explain this perspective. So you can use it for like everything. And once you get the AI agent to be able to talk to the computer, right, can read from your computer, can write to the computer, it can search to the internet, it is so much more than a chatbot. People think it's a chatbot. People think it's a Google search replacement because Google search has been pretty bad for like 10 years at this point. It is these things, but it is so much more. And it's been half an hour, and that's all I got. So if you got any questions, add them below, I guess. Peace. Where's the pause button on this? This is my first time using this software. Oh, here it is.